songwriter murdered before he could collect his royalties, a hit song recorded by a woman who was never paid a single dollar, record labels that stole everything while artists died broke. This is the dark truth behind R&B's golden age. I'm your host at Soul Lens, and today, we're pulling back the curtain on 15 songs that changed music forever. But the people who created them, most never saw the money, never got the credit, never lived to see their legacy.
Was not so long ago.
This isn't about ruining the music. This is about honoring the artists by telling the truth. Artists who got robbed, careers destroyed by racism, lives cut short by violence and addiction, fortunes stolen by people who smiled while signing contracts. Let's talk about what really happened.
I wouldn't hesitate.
Number 15, Tears on My Pillow. Little Anthony and the Imperials, 1958. Little Anthony Gourdine was 17 years old when he recorded Tears on My Pillow. 17, still in high school, and the adults around him saw dollar signs. The song was written by Sylvester Bradford and Al Lewis in about 20 minutes. Simple doo-wop progression, nothing complicated. But when Little Anthony sang it with that pure, aching falsetto, it became something else entirely. The Imperials backing him with those tight harmonies. The whole thing recorded at Bell Sound Studios in New York in one afternoon session. Released in July 1958 on End Records, it shot to number 4 pop and number 2 R&B. Massive hit. Little Anthony and the Imperials were suddenly stars, performing on American Bandstand, touring constantly. Teenage girls screaming at every show. From the outside, it looked like success. From the inside, it was exploitation.
Little Anthony and the Imperials.
Little Anthony and the group were signed to a contract that gave them almost nothing. The label, End Records, owned everything. The publishing, the masters, the rights. The group was making maybe a few hundred per show while the label and management were making thousands. Anthony was still living with his parents in Brooklyn while Tears on My Pillow was selling hundreds of thousands of copies. And here's the thing. This was standard practice. Black teenagers from poor neighborhoods didn't have lawyers, didn't understand publishing, didn't know they were signing away their futures. The music industry saw talented black kids as products to exploit, not artists to develop. Little Anthony spent decades fighting for his rights to his own songs. He's still alive today, in his 80s, still performing. But he never made the money he should have from Tears on My Pillow. Most of it went to people who never sang a note. Number 14, Lonely Teardrops. Jackie Wilson, 1958. Jackie Wilson had one of the greatest voices in R&B history. Everyone knows that. James Brown called him the best live performer he'd ever seen. Elvis Presley studied Jackie's moves, but Jackie Wilson died broke and brain damaged after 8 years in a coma. Lonely Teardrops was written by Berry Gordy, Gwen Gordy, and Tyron Carlo in late 1958. Berry Gordy, before he founded Motown, was a struggling songwriter who saw Jackie Wilson as his meal ticket. The song has that classic doo-wop structure with Jackie's incredible vocal range on full display. Going from tender verses to that soaring chorus, they recorded it at United Sound Systems in Detroit. Jackie nailed the vocal in just a few takes, his voice doing things that shouldn't be physically possible, and the emotional range, the technical precision, everything. Released in December '58, it hit number 7 pop and number 1 R&B for 7 weeks. Jackie's biggest hit in years. Should have set him up financially for life. But here's the dark truth. Jackie Wilson's manager was a man named Nat Tarnopol, and Nat controlled everything. Jackie's contract was structured so that Nat got the majority of the money. Jackie was constantly touring, constantly performing, constantly working, but he never saw most of the money he earned. Nat convinced Jackie that he was handling everything, investing the money, setting him up for the future. It was all lies. Jackie was functionally broke while being one of the biggest stars in R&B. In September 1975, Jackie suffered a massive heart attack on stage while performing Lonely Teardrops at a Dick Clark Oldies show in New Jersey. He fell and hit his head. Brain damage. He spent 8 years in a coma in a nursing home. 8 years. Nat Tarnopol refused to pay for proper care. Jackie's family had to fight just to keep him in a decent facility. He died January 21st, 1984, at 49 years old. Never regained consciousness. One of the greatest performers in music history, and he died with almost nothing. Lonely Teardrops made millions over the decades through covers and licensing. Jackie Wilson's estate saw almost none of it. Number 13, You Send Me, Sam Cooke, 1957. Sam Cooke recorded You Send Me in his manager's garage in Los Angeles. Not a professional studio, a garage with borrowed equipment and a tiny budget. This was September 1957. Sam had just left the Soul Stirrers, the legendary gospel group, and his former fans were calling him a traitor. Gospel purists said he'd sold his soul by going secular. The major labels wouldn't touch him because they thought gospel singers couldn't cross over. So Sam had to do it himself.
Now I find myself wanting to marry.
His manager, Bumps Blackwell, believed in him when nobody else would. They recorded You Send Me in Bumps's garage with session musicians who worked for almost nothing. Sam's voice was perfect on the first take. That smooth, effortless delivery that would define his entire career. And they knew immediately they had something special. Here's where it gets dark. They released it on a tiny independent label called Keen Records because no major label would distribute it. Within weeks, it was clear the song was massive. It hit #1 pop for 3 weeks. But Keen Records and the distributors made most of the money. Sam's contract was garbage. He got pennies per record while other people got rich off his voice. And that pattern would follow him his entire career. Create the hits. Watch other people profit. Seven years later, in December 1964, Sam Cooke was shot and killed at a Los Angeles motel under circumstances that still don't make sense. He was 33 years old, dead before he could ever truly control his own masters or his own money.
You home, I know you.
Number 12, There Goes My Baby, The Drifters, 1959. There Goes My Baby was revolutionary. First R&B hit to use strings. First to use that Latin timbal rhythm. It basically invented the sound that would dominate soul music in the 60s. But the Drifters who recorded it weren't even the real Drifters. Here's what happened.
There goes my baby.
The original Drifters, the group that had hits in the early 50s, had a falling out with their manager, George Treadwell, in 1958. Treadwell owned the name The Drifters because that's how contracts worked back then. So when the original members left, Treadwell just fired everyone and replaced them. He found a group called the Five Crowns, slapped the Drifters' name onto them, and kept going like nothing happened. Ben E. King was the lead singer of this new version of the Drifters. He had nothing to do with the original group. Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller produced There Goes My Baby at Atlantic Studios in New York. When they first heard the playback with the strings and the timbals, they thought it sounded terrible. The strings were out of tune. The whole mix was muddy. But Atlantic Records executive Ahmet Ertegun heard something special. He forced them to release it. Released in April '59, it became a smash. Number 2 pop, number 1 R&B. Proved that R&B could use orchestration and get more sophisticated. But here's the dark part. Those drifters who sang on the hit had no claim to the name, no ownership, no control. When Benny King left to go solo in '60, they just replaced him. When the other members left, they got replaced too. By the mid-'60s, none of the guys who sang There Goes My Baby were in the group anymore. George Treadwell owned the name, so he just kept cycling through singers. And the guys who actually created the hits got nothing. Benny King went solo and did great, but most of the others, they disappeared. The Drifters' name kept touring for decades with completely different people. It's still touring today, but the men who invented the sound, forgotten and unpaid. Number 11. What Did I Say? Ray Charles, 1959. Ray Charles recorded What Did I Say? Live during a dance in Pennsylvania in February 1959. The song didn't exist before that night. He made it up on the spot because the dance was ending and they needed to fill time. Ray started playing this electric piano riff, call and response with the Raylettes. Sexual energy that was barely disguised. The crowd went absolutely crazy. People were dancing like they were in church, or somewhere else entirely. Ray knew immediately he had something dangerous. They recorded a studio version at Atlantic Studios in New York a few weeks later, trying to capture that live energy. Atlantic wanted to release it as a single, but there was a problem. The song was too long and too sexual. Radio stations were going to ban it. The moaning, new at the call and response, it sounded like sex disguised as music. Atlantic cut it into 2 parts and released it anyway. Part 1 hit number 6 pop and number 1 R&B in summer '59. It became Ray's breakthrough crossover hit. But it also became his biggest problem. White audiences and critics accused him of being obscene, corrupting youth, bringing black sexuality into white homes through their radios. Southern radio stations banned it. Churches preached against it. Ray Charles was suddenly dangerous and controversial. Here's the dark truth, though. Ray fought his entire career against being pigeonholed and controlled. Atlantic Records made millions off Ray Charles, but Ray's contract meant he saw a fraction of what he deserved. He eventually left Atlantic in 1959 for ABC Paramount because they gave him ownership of his masters. First black artist to demand and get that. But the years at Atlantic, all those hits, including What Did I Say?, Ray never fully controlled. And the racism he faced because of the sexual nature of his music followed him forever. Police harassment. Arrest for drugs in '65 that was clearly targeted. The establishment never forgave Ray Charles for What Did I Say? Because it was a black man being openly sexual and successful. That was threatening. Ray fought back by being even more successful. But the cost was constant battle and surveillance. If you're enjoying this journey through R&B history, hit that subscribe button. Your support keeps us going and motivates us to bring you more untold stories. Now let's continue with number 10. Number 10. Money, That's What I Want. Barrett Strong, 1959. Barrett Strong was 19 years old when he recorded Money, That's What I Want, in '59. And the irony of that song destroying his career while making other people rich? Almost too perfect. Berry Gordy wrote the song with Janie Bradford. This was before Motown really existed. Berry was running out of a small office, releasing records on his Tamla label. Barrett Strong had this raw, aggressive voice. Not smooth, not polished, just honest and demanding.
That's what I want.
They recorded it at United Sound Systems in Detroit. One session, Barrett shouting the lyrics with this desperation that felt real because it was real. Released in August '59 on Tamla, then leased to Anna Records for wider distribution. It hit number 2 R&B and number 23 pop. Solid hit. Should have launched Barrett Strong's career as a major star. But here's what happened. Berry Gordy was so focused on building Motown and finding the next hit that he basically abandoned Barrett Strong. No follow-up single got promoted properly, no tour support, nothing. Barrett had one of the first Motown hits, and then Berry just moved on to the next artist. Barrett spent the next few years bouncing between labels, trying to get another hit. It never happened. The darkest part? Money became a standard. The Beatles covered it in '63. The Rolling Stones performed it. Countless other artists recorded it. The song made millions in publishing and royalties over the decades. Barrett Strong, the guy who sang it with that raw honesty, saw very little of that money. Once he ended up working as a songwriter at Motown through the '60s and '70s, writing classics like I Heard It Through the Grapevine and War. Great songwriter, but as an artist, one hit, then nothing. The song called Money ruined his performing career while making everyone else rich. That's not irony. That's the music business. Number 9. Chain Gang. Sam Cooke, 1960.
I hear something saying.
Sam Cooke wrote Chain Gang after seeing a chain gang of prisoners working on the side of the road during a tour through the South. The image haunted him. Black men in chains, singing while they worked. Prison labor that was basically slavery with a different name. Sam wanted to write something that acknowledged that reality but made it palatable enough for pop radio. So he wrote Chain Gang with that hoo-ha sound mimicking the prisoners' work songs. The pickaxe hitting the ground. It's brilliant and subtle protest music disguised as a pop song.
Working on the chain gang.
Recorded at RCA Studios in Hollywood in July 1960. Sam's voice smooth and mournful over that distinctive rhythm. Released in August '60, it hit number 2 pop and number 1 R&B. Massive hit, one of Sam's biggest. But white audiences had no idea they were listening to a song about prison slavery. They just thought it was catchy. Here's the dark truth. Sam Cooke was one of the most politically aware artists of his generation. He wrote songs like A Change Is Gonna Come that explicitly dealt with racism and inequality. But he had to disguise most of his social commentary because being too openly political would get him blacklisted from radio. Record labels told him to stick to love songs. Keep it safe. Keep it commercial. Sam did what he could, sneaking messages into songs like Chain Gang, but he was constantly frustrated that he couldn't say what he really wanted to say. Then, December 1964, Sam Cooke was shot and killed at the Hacienda Motel in Los Angeles. But the official story was that a motel manager shot him in self-defense after he attacked her. But that story never made sense. Sam's family never believed it. His friends never believed it. There were too many inconsistencies, too many unanswered questions. Some people think Sam was murdered, possibly because of his civil rights activism and his growing business power. He'd just started his own label, was taking control of his masters, was becoming too independent. Dead at 33. Chain Gang played at his funeral. A song about black men in chains, performed for a black man who died under suspicious circumstances. The system won. Number 8. Will You Love Me Tomorrow? The Shirelles, 1960. The Shirelles were 4 black teenage girls from New Jersey who recorded the first girl group song to hit #1 pop. But they were completely exploited by the adults around them. Will You Love Me Tomorrow was written by Carole King and Jerry Goffin, 2 white songwriters working in the Brill Building. The song is about a teenage girl deciding whether to have sex with her boyfriend. Will he still respect her in the morning? Will he love her tomorrow? Or will he leave once he gets what he wants? For 1960, this was incredibly bold subject matter. The Shirelles recorded it at Bell Sound Studios in New York. Shirley Owens sang lead with this vulnerable, questioning tone. The production by Luther Dixon was lush and sophisticated. Strings, timpani, the whole thing. They're released in November '60. It climbed to #1 pop in January '61. Historic achievement. First girl group to top the pop charts. The Shirelles were suddenly massive stars. But their contract with Scepter Records was criminal. They got almost nothing. No meaningful royalties. No control over their music. Their manager, Florence Greenberg, who owned Scepter Records, treated them like children who didn't need to understand business. The girls were making a few hundred, while Will You Love Me Tomorrow was selling hundreds of thousands of copies and making tens of thousands of dollars for the label. The Shirelles had multiple hits over the next few years, but they never saw real money. When the British invasion hit in '64, their popularity declined, and Scepter dropped them without any financial security. They spent decades fighting for their royalties and their rights. Some of them had to work day jobs well into old age. Shirley Owens, the lead singer, ended up working as a school bus driver in the '80s. The voice that sang #1 hits? Driving a school bus because the music industry robbed her. Will You Love Me Tomorrow has been covered hundreds of times. The Shirelles, the women who made it a hit, never got wealthy from it. They got famous and broke. That's the reality behind the girl group era. Number 7. Tossin' and Turnin'. Bobby Lewis, 1961. Bobby Lewis had the biggest hit of 1961. #1 pop for 7 weeks. #1 R&B for 9 weeks. One of the longest running #1s of the decade. And it destroyed his life. Tossin' and Turnin' was written by Richie Adams and Malou Renee. Simple song about not being able to sleep because you're thinking about someone. Bobby Lewis sang it with this manic energy. Not smooth, kind of wild and desperate. The production was raw and energetic. Recorded at Belltone Studios in New York in early '61. Released in May '61 on Belltone Records, and it exploded immediately. By July, it was #1 everywhere. Bobby Lewis was 31 years old and finally had his breakthrough hit after years of struggling. But Belltone Records was a small, semi-shady independent label. The contract Bobby signed gave him almost nothing. Pennies per record. Here's where it gets dark. Bobby tried to follow up Tossin' and Turnin' with other singles, but nothing came close. The pressure to recreate that success destroyed him. He started drinking heavily. Beltone dropped him after a few flop singles. Other labels wouldn't sign him because he was now viewed as a one-hit wonder. By the mid-60s, he was playing oldies shows for a few hundred a night, watching his one massive hit fade into nostalgia. Bobby Lewis spent the rest of his life trying to capitalize on tossin' and turnin', touring constantly, playing county fairs and oldies package tours. He made enough to survive, but never got wealthy. Meanwhile, the song kept getting licensed for commercials and movies. The publishing made millions over the decades. Bobby saw almost none of it. He died in April 2020 at 86. Still relatively unknown, despite having one of the biggest hits of the 60s. One song, 7 weeks at #1, and a lifetime of disappointment afterward. The music industry chewed him up and spit him out. Number 6, Stand By Me, Ben E. King, 1961.
We'd love to. Want Johnny to sing?
Benny King left the Drifters in 1960 because he wanted more money and more control. Smart move, right? He immediately had a solo hit with Spanish Harlem, then followed it up with Stand By Me. Should have set him up for life.
Be afraid, no, I won't.
Stand By Me was co-written by Benny King, Jerry Lieber, and Mike Stoller. The song was based on a gospel hymn, Stand By Me, by Charles Albert Tindley. Ben adapted it into a secular love song with that iconic bass line that became instantly recognizable. Recorded at Atlantic Studios in New York in April '61 with legendary session musicians. One evening session, that bass line from Lloyd Trotman, the strings arranged by Stan Applebaum, and Ben's voice just floating over everything with that effortless grace. Released in April '61, it was a solid hit. Number 4, pop, number 1 R&B. Over the decades, it became one of the most played songs of the 20th century. By 1999, BMI calculated it was the 4th most played song of the entire century. The 1986 movie Stand By Me sent it back to number 9 on the charts, making Ben the first artist to hit the top 10 in 4 different decades. Incredible longevity. But here's the dark truth. Ben E. King gave away half his songwriting credit to Lieber and Stoller to get them to produce the session. Standard practice, but it meant Ben only got a third of the publishing for a song he essentially wrote himself. And his contract with Atlantic meant the label owned the master recording. Ben got artist royalties, which were tiny, but Atlantic got everything else. Over the decades, as Stand By Me earned over $22 million in royalties and licensing fees, Ben's share was a fraction of what it should have been. Ben toured constantly for 50 years based on that one song. He had other hits, but nothing touched Stand By Me. He was still performing into his 70s, still needing the money because the music industry never paid him fairly for creating one of the most valuable songs in history.
Is the only light we'll see.
He died April 30th, 2015 at 76. His estate continues to receive some royalties, but the bulk of the money went to Atlantic Records and the publishers. Benny King created an eternal song and never got properly paid for it. That's the business. Number 5, Duke of Earl, Gene Chandler, 1962. Gene Chandler recorded Duke of Earl when he was 22 years old. The song hit number 1 pop for 3 weeks and number 1 R&B for 5 weeks in 1962. It sold over 3 million copies. Gene should have become a millionaire. He didn't. Duke of Earl started as a song called The Duke, written by Earl Edwards, Eugene Dixon, Gene Chandler, and Bernice Williams. They rewrote it into Duke of Earl with that distinctive bass vocal, Do 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 that became the hook. Recorded at VJ Records in Chicago in late '61. The recording was simple. Doo-wop harmony with that bass vocal and Gene's lead floating over it.
When I hold you, you are my duchess.
Released in January '62, it became one of the biggest hits of the year. Gene Chandler started performing in a cape and top hat as the Duke of Earl character. Wildly popular, VJ Records was making enormous amounts of money. Gene was getting pennies. Here's the dark part. VJ Records was notoriously shady with their accounting. Artists complained for years that they weren't getting paid properly. The label would claim expenses and deductions that ate up almost all the royalties. Gene Chandler sold 3 million copies of Duke of Earl and saw maybe a few $1,000s total. Meanwhile, VJ executives were driving new cars and living in big houses. Gene tried to have follow-up hits, but VJ didn't promote them properly. When the British invasion hit in '64, Gene's moment was over. He bounced between labels for the next few decades. Had a few minor hits in the '70s, but never came close to Duke of Earl again. He spent the rest of his career playing oldies shows, trading on that one song. And every time Duke of Earl got licensed for a commercial or movie, VJ or their successors made the money. Gene got a small percentage. He's still alive today, in his 80s, still occasionally performing. But Duke of Earl made millions, and Gene Chandler never saw most of it. The music industry in the '60s was designed to enrich white executives and publishers while keeping black artists broke. Gene's story is textbook.
And no one can hurt you.
Number 4. You've Really Got a Hold on Me. Over 1 million copies sold. None of them got wealthy. He's So Fine was written by Ronnie Mack, who was dying of Hodgkin's lymphoma when the song became a hit. Ronnie was 23 years old. The song has that do-lang, do-lang, do-lang hook that became iconic. The Chiffons recorded it at Mira Sound Studios. Released in December '62, it slowly climbed to number 1 by March '63. Ronnie Mack died in '09. Same melody, same structure. Bright Tunes Music, which owned the publishing to He's So Fine after Ronnie Mack died, sued George Harrison for copyright infringement. The case went on for years. In 1976, the court ruled that George Harrison had subconsciously plagiarized He's So Fine. He was ordered to pay damages of $599,000. None of that money went to the Chiffons. None went to Ronnie Mack's family. It all went to Bright Tunes Music, the publishing company. The girls who sang the song and made it famous got nothing from the lawsuit. The songwriter who created it was already dead. The only people who benefited were music industry lawyers and executives who had nothing to do with creating the actual song. The Chiffons spent the '60s having a few more minor hits, then faded completely. Some of them had to work regular jobs. The girl group who had a number 1 hit for 4 weeks ended up broke while executives fought over millions in court. That's the music industry. Number 2. Fingertips, Part 2. Little Stevie Wonder, 1963. Stevie Wonder was 12 years old when Fingertips Part 2 hit number 1. 12, and Motown basically owned him. Berry Gordy signed Stevie when he was 11, and Stevie's mother signed contracts she didn't fully understand. Motown took control of everything: publishing, masters, touring, merchandise. Stevie was a child star with no real control over his money or career. Motown put him on a salary and told him they were investing his money for the future. They weren't. Fingertips Part 2 was recorded live at the Regal Theater in Chicago in June '63. Stevie went rogue on stage, kept playing when he was supposed to stop, and created this spontaneous moment of genius. Released in June '63, It was #1 pop and R&B by August, a first live recording to top both charts. Stevie became Little Stevie Wonder overnight. But being a child star at Motown meant constant touring, constant recording, constant pressure, and all the money going into Motown's pockets while Stevie and his family saw very little.
Don't do anything that you wanna do. Yeah.
Stevie was making millions for Motown and living modestly. When Stevie turned 21 in 1971, he discovered that the money Motown claimed they'd been saving for him was mostly gone, spent on expenses and management fees that were never clearly explained. Stevie had to threaten to leave Motown to renegotiate his contract. In 1971, he demanded and got creative control and better royalties. But by then, he'd already lost years of earnings from hits like Fingertips. A 12-year-old blind kid from Michigan created one of the biggest hits of '63, and adults who should have protected him stole his money instead. That's not an exaggeration. That's what happened. And it happened to almost every child star in that era. #1. Louie Louie. The Kingsmen, 1963. The FBI investigated Louie Louie for 2 years, and in the end, the only criminals were the music executives. The Kingsmen were high school kids from Portland who recorded Louie Louie in one take for $36 at a small studio. Jack Ely sang lead. The recording quality was terrible. You couldn't understand the lyrics. That's what made it controversial. Parents assumed unintelligible lyrics must be dirty lyrics. Released in May '63, it slowly built to #2 pop by December. The FBI investigated, found nothing obscene, and closed the case. But the controversy made the song huge. Over 10 million copies sold worldwide. Biggest hit of 1963. Here's the dark truth. The Kingsmen broke up almost immediately, fighting over money. Their manager and the label set up the publishing and royalties to benefit themselves, not the band. Jack Ely, who sang the lead vocal that everyone knows, was cut out of most of the money. He signed documents he didn't understand, and by the time he realized what happened, it was too late. Jack Ely spent his entire life fighting for the money he was owed from Louie Louie. He worked day jobs, played small gigs, hired lawyers who took his money and accomplished nothing. The song made millions through licensing, commercials, movies, covers. Jack saw almost none of it. He died in April 2015 at 71 years old, having earned maybe a few $1,000s total from the most famous vocal performance of his life. The other Kingsmen members had similar stories: lawsuits, bankruptcy, broken dreams. Meanwhile, yet the publishing company and the labels kept making money. Louie Louie has been covered over 1,600 times. It's the most recorded rock song in history, and the kids who recorded the original for $36 never got rich. They got famous and destroyed. The music industry saw talented teenagers and saw opportunity to exploit. And that's exactly what they did. The FBI investigated the wrong crime. They should have investigated the contracts.